Hello, I'm Jared.
And I'm Ebony, and this is his
And hers.
Warhammer 40k.
Yay.
Yay! We're back.
We're back after a bit of a break. This time to talk about Dawn of Fire Book 3, The Wolftime by Gav Thorpe.
Just plowing through those Dawn of Fire books.
Yeah, we're pushing through them.
This one, not as good as the last one.
I would call it a good Gav Thorpe novel. The last Gav Thorpe novel that you read was Angels of Caliban.
Which I loved about 50% of, which
And
is how I feel about this book.
I also loved 50% of it, but we loved different parts of it.
Okay, yeah, I would give this a solid 5 out of 10.
Oh, really? I'd give it a 6.
Oh, okay. I would say, like, the second half of this book is the part that I start caring about the characters and things are interesting and matter, and that the whole first half is like, eh.
The first third of this book is pretty heavy slog to get through. And in fact, going back through just the character lists and just while reviewing it,
you're like, who's that?
The first third of it, I completely forgot even happened. There are Night Lords in this book, apparently.
I forgot about that.
I completely forgot about. Essentially, this is the book that details the acceptance of the the acceptance of the Space Wolves.
Accepting
Primaris Marines.
It's a lot of accepting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say the overall story is about Guilliman trying to get the head of the Space Wolves, which is Logan Grimnar, to accept Primaris Marines because they've been protecting an area of space from an orc incursion, and it's going awry. Like the attrition rate of warriors of Space Wolves is really high, so they're at risk of losing their legion. So Guilliman shows up and he's like, we have this technology, we can make Primaris Marines. Here's a whole bunch that I made from Russ's Gene Seed. They're Space Wolves. And Logan Grimnar ain't having it. He's like, ain't nobody got time for your Primaris Marines because the Wolftime is coming and a bunch of things I don't agree with. Really?
So, Ebony is not a religious person, and I feel there are some pretty strong religious contexts that go through this book, and the idea of sort of the end times, which is really how the Space Wolves treat the Wolftime.
It's not the religious aspect that I'm against. I actually really like that about the Space Wolves. I like the sort of like historical, semi-religious, like I like the society and the culture of Space Wolves. I'm not against that. What I'm actually against is Logan Grimnar. It feels less like yes, it's ostensibly the Wolftime is coming and things are supposed to be bad and we're not supposed to change that. That's the overtone, but the undertone that I get is that he's like, I'm super prideful and I will not take this help from Guilliman. I'll just let all these warriors die because the Wolftime says we're going to die anyway. So maybe it's now, maybe it isn't now. I don't care. I'm not going to owe any debt to Guilliman. And it just feels like stupid, willful pride. And it goes on for so long that it's just like, if I were Guilliman, I probably would have murdered all the Space Wolves and redacted them. Like, nobody has time for that. We're trying to save the Imperium.
But that's not...
I know that's not his style either.
How... No, not just Guilliman. Like, Guilliman has separate reasons for making sure that the Space Wolves accept Primaris.
Yes. And like keeping all the first founding chapters of it. I get it. I get all of his...
It wasn't even that, though. We'll get to that at the end. Logan Grimnar believes in sort of the weird of the Wolftime, which most 40k fans would just know it as when Leman Russ will return. But it's more than that. It is the destruction of the Space Wolves as a culture, essentially. It's when they believe that they will when they will cease to exist. And so if they were to, he sees it as accepting Primaris is fighting against what should be
the Wolftime.
Like,
what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, what is supposed to happen.
The natural order of their existence, right? Yeah. I don't know. It's a lot of like, there are all these visible facts that suggest that you will not only be doing a disservice to your chapter, you would be doing a disservice to your obligation to the Imperium. Like, it seems so overwhelmingly obvious to me that this is a thing that he should accept and do and is part of doing his job. And I don't got time for people who don't do their jobs like that. that just is an Ebony thing, and I just feel like I don't know how Gilliman didn't punch him in the face.
Well, in a way, I think the fact that he didn't punch Grimnar in the face made Grimnar like him less.
Probably.
Because he knows
Yeah.
Leman Russ would have punched him in the face,
Yeah.
most likely.
Yeah. There is definitely a distrust there of Gilliman as the breaker of legions, but also showing up
So
as the head of...
I feel like, though, Grimnar was reasonable compared to when Bjorn was woken up.
Yeah, Bjorn wasn't having that.
So Bjorn remembers when the legions were first broken.
Yeah.
And knew how much Russ hated that.
Yeah.
And how close that a civil war broke out because of that.
And he's just like, this dude disbanded all the legions, like, ruined them all, and now he's showing up commanding millions of brand new Space Marines? Like, what? No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Bjorn would have opened fire.
Yeah, I think so.
He was not about it at all.
Yeah, eventually Logan Grimnar comes around. But I think the, like, selling point of this whole novel for me is Gaius' story.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Gaius is one of the first sons of Russ Primaris to be transferred to the Space Wolves. And they sort of get around that a little bit like circularly because they don't give them to Fenris directly.
Yeah.
The force of Primaris that Gaius is with meets up with Crom Dragongaze, who's one of the Wolf Lords and who at the time is fighting alongside another chapter called the Dragon Spears against some orcs. So basically...
There's a lot of dragon and it's very confusing. That's an aside from me.
Gaius' squads show up, they provide support, they explain who they are, and Crom, who is... He's not as, like, globally minded. Like, his belief on this is, sweet, reinforcements. Yeah. They're part of my great company now. Awesome.
Bringing them back to the
Bringing
end.
them back. Everyone's going to love this.
Yeah, no one loves it.
No one loves this.
Well, I think Gnarl loves it. But Logan Grimnar does not love it. Yeah.
So that is because Njal Stormcaller is against the idea that this is the Wolftime. Mm-hmm. You know, that his visions that he's seeing is not of Russ returning. It is of Grimnar or another Space Wolf commander, which from lore that was out already, we know who this is.
Okay.
Fights Gazgul Thraka.
Okay.
Who is the big
Orc
leader
guy.
of the orcs
all
at
of
the
his
moment.
visions are about a wolf fighting a giant greenskin, and ostensibly there's an orc invasion happening in this sector that is the sort of backdrop of the Space Wolves' general problem. Like, they are trying to hold and protect this part of space, which includes the planet Fenris.
What was the name of the orc Space Hulk? Gotrock?
The Gotrock, yeah.
Yeah, so the book opens, or relatively soon opens, with the Space Wolves' assault on a big Space Hulk called Gotrock that is absolutely teeming with orcs.
Yeah.
And we get this perspectives of Grimnar, of Aryak Rockfist, his champion, of Njal Stormcaller, assaulting a group of orcs that is led by a weird boy, which is always nice to see rather than the normal... knobs or other orc leaders.
And they are doing some sort of psyker situation, like some sort of bad chaos psyker situation is happening.
Weird boys are orc psychers.
Psychers, yeah. And they're like raising something. It's really unclear, but that is the thing that causes a shockwave that causes the death of a bunch of astropaths on board an Imperial ship somewhere.
Right, yeah.
Who we just read in the list, and we were like, who are those people? But those are those people.
Yeah, there's a series of events early on that, looking back on them, I understand how they're connected.
Yeah.
But it was tough getting through
at the time
them
of reading. There are definitely, I feel like, just style wise, writing wise, there's a lot of things where it's like, if you had done every other scene was this scene, I would catch up that this is a continuation of this story. But there are parts where it's like every 17th break, we're back to a random psyker on a random ship, and you're like, where are we? What's happening? I might have edited it a little differently.
Normally, most books of this style, they do have 3 sections per chapter.
Yeah.
This one, though, I felt like rather than going like rotating between the same three or maybe a fourth one every now and again, there were more like 7 or 8 that they kept rotating between.
It was hard. It was a little hard to follow in the beginning.
Yeah, just at the start, there were a lot of different perspectives, and it was tough.
And most of them you don't really need them for the overarching conclusion of the book.
Yeah, and that brings me to the main one that I wish it could have been a separate novella. It could have been a separate short story. I don't think it adds enough to this novel for how many pages it was included in. And that is it Orad?
Yeah, so Orad is on a ship called the Resolute, I believe.
The Rigorous.
The Rigorous. I was close. That gets taken over by orcs, and they, kill all the command. They take the sort of menial humans that run the guns and make them orc slaves, and they are building They're retrofitting this Imperial ship to be an orc ship.
They're basically doing what orcs do, which is they steal stuff and then use wrenches. Yeah.
Yeah, and so Orad is a part of the slave humans on this ship, and we get some of his memories when it was a loyalist ship, and he had his comrades and like his sort of authority figures around him, and those people get killed by orcs, and it's traumatizing for him, and eventually he starts an uprising, which ties into part of our main story.
So apparently that is a 3-year period.
Yeah, it did. It was a long time.
Yeah, because the Rigorous was the ship that was originally going to supply Primaris tech to Fenris.
And it went missing.
Yeah. Right. It is eventually found as part of another storyline, but overall, the whole orc slave perspective, it's not great.
Unless it's a setup for something that's going to happen in book 4 that we haven't read yet, which maybe.
Okay, so at the end, Orad does join, I believe it's the 44th Penitents.
Right, and they're fighting.
Which are I want to say are a fraterist militia group. Okay. Like they're extremely religious.
Okay.
So
well, he does become a religious nut courtesy of his orc time. Yeah, and
so that might become a thing. Yeah, but at least within this story,
not super important.
Yeah,
except that it ties into. So there is a team of historiators led by Mudire, and sort of managed by Vikalan, whose general mission is to trace the history of a weapon that's used in book 2, which is called the Gift of Bucharest, and they are trying to figure out how that weapon came to be, where Bucharest came from, and they think that he had some interaction with the space wolves, right? So we're looking in the Fenris area, and so they are trying to figure out the history of Bucharest coming to power, and then falling to chaos, etc. And so Mudire and Vikalan and their team of historiators end up collecting Urad, and that's how we get the end result of his story, which is that he's gone crazy.
Right.
That was on their way to Herthane?
Himhertha.
Yeah.
So you jumped ahead a little bit, which is the reason that they were going to Fenris in the first place.
Yeah.
And that's because when Bucharest was... I forgot the title that he was given.
Like chaplain or high priest.
Right.
Or one of those
when
words.
When he was in charge, he caused the Plague of Unbelief, which was a known time period in like 40K history. We didn't really know a lot about it. Okay. But apparently during that time, his forces assaulted and took over a good chunk of Fenris.
Okay. And thus the Space Wolves might have knowledge of what this gift of Bucharest is.
Right, because post Plague of Unbelief, as they do, the Inquisition came in and purged a lot of that. Right. Because it is primarily the goal of the Ordo Redactus to remove anything that might show weakness of the Imperium.
Yeah, so that story's happening while the Gaius story is happening.
Right. So Gaius, I've heard it described as Gaius is sort of like...
it's like a Space Wolf fanboy?
Like he's an otaku that ends up going to Japan and is now trying to like be an actual Japanese citizen.
He's got this like cute little book of history of Space Wolves, but as histories are, it's like really poorly written and like
it's written okay,
but like he meets an actual Space Wolf and they're like, what word did you just say? Like, what are you talking about? It's great. And so his team saves Ullr in the Dragon Slayers, right?
So Ullr's Grey Pelts, were a wolf pack underneath Crom Dragon Gaze. So he's the first one that Gaius really gets to know, and Uller sort of takes him under his wing to help train him and explain what it means to be a space wolf and the culture. And I actually really like these scenes a lot.
Yeah, I like that.
Gaius' whole story arc from beginning to end, I thought was by far the strongest part of this book.
Yeah, and so Guilliman's on his way. Uller's trying to help Gaius become a space wolf. Logan Grimnar knows Guilliman's on his way. He's like, no thank you, Primaris Marine. So he's kind of mad at everyone. And somehow they're going on a mission. I'm going to tie us into that other story that you didn't care about at all. That, like, they're going on this mission and Gaius is like, it's great, I'm going to be a space wolf. And they're like, dude, you're not a space wolf. And he's like...
Oh, with the Prosperance?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought that was okay.
Well, no, but then he runs away.
I thought that part was okay, too.
Getting back to Fenris.
Oh, yeah.
So they're like, you're never going to be a space wolf because, like, you're an uplander. Like, you weren't here. And he was like, I could pass the test of Mordecai. I'm going to show you. And then he jumps out of a plane like a crazy person.
Yep.
And lands on Fenris. And it's, like, full winter time.
Yeah,
and terrible. And then we tie into this story that has been happening in little vignettes for the whole first half of the book.
The folk of Landsatmar?
Yeah, the Landsat are just like a nomadic group of Fenrisians.
Well, all Fenrisians are nomadic.
Yeah, because half the planet is lava snow.
And it constantly shifts. Like, there's a line that really, I think, explained that well, which was that the mountain range that you are looking at right now could not be there next year.
Yeah, which is wild.
Or there could be a mountain range where you're standing right now.
Yeah, Fenris is wild. So the Landsat Maringi are like a nomadic tribe, and they are thinking about getting ready to move, and a woman, like a stay-at-home mom, I guess, Geetha, has been having these nightmares, which is a terrible way to start the storyline, because it starts in the middle of her nightmares, and I remember being like, what is happening? Who is chasing whom? Right? And so she's having visions sort of on par with Gnarl Stormcaller. Like, she's having these visions of a wolf in a fight with an orc and maybe someone in gold, right? There's all that. And she goes to the elders and she's like, I need to tell this thing to the Sky Warriors, because
she is a Gothi.
She becomes a Gothi.
Which is it's basically the Fenrisian term for, like, Psyker, like, but like the old-timey, like, hedge witch type of Psyker.
Goodish Psyker.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she goes to her elders, and they make her a Gothi. They haven't had a Gothi in a long time. And she's like, we have to go to the Sky Warriors, which is what they call the Space Wolves, at Asaheim, which is the that Logan Grimnar is at the moment.
So Asaheim is the continent that the is on. Think of Asaheim as, like, because North Pole doesn't really have a continent.
Yes.
It's if Antarctica was on the North Pole.
Okay. Yeah, and so they're going to go on this journey, and somehow this random lady convinces her whole entire community that she is a Gothi, and this is the right thing to do, and they're going to move their whole family, and this requires them to, like, walk across snow deserts and through forests and build ships and cross an ocean. Like, it's a long journey, and we get the unfortunateness of listening to them go through this long journey for a long time.
The problem is no one in this tribe has personality. Geetha has a smattering of it, and gains a little more when eventually the tribe runs into Gaius, who was fighting a black mane wolf and almost died, essentially.
So Uller had given him a wolf's tooth on a necklace.
On a neck. You know, like the shark tooth necklace? Yeah. It's basically one of those.
Like that, on a thong, and it was something that he cherished because it was like a space wolf totem, and he has to defend himself against this black wolf, and it disembowels him, but he stabs it in the eye with the wolf tooth, and it kills him, and it falls on top of him, and because he's a Primaris Marine, he isn't dead, he's just really, really slowly dying. And Geetha and her daughter and her mother-in-law find him, and those two stories get together, which I think that part of the Landsat Maringi story and Gaius' story is super great, and maybe my favorite part of the book.
Once they are together, I think they play off each other very well.
Yeah, and so...
But before that,
it's not great.
Geetha's storyline is such a slog.
Yeah.
Because she has just the bare minimum of personality, and no one else in her tribe does.
And it's great, though, because Gaius has all the personality, really.
There was a really cool part that I liked, where Gaius mentions that the plugs of his black carapace, because they are metal, they conduct the cold into his body
so
worse.
So he puts like fat in them.
Yeah,
like
so he has to
fat.
like smear animal fat on them.
Yeah.
I thought that was a really neat detail.
Yeah, I think, they get together and she's like, I'm trying to go to Asaheim to see the Sky Warriors, and he's like, I came from there and I have shame, I can't go back, but I believe you, so I'll guide you there and then I'll leave you. So she's like, all right, come with us, help us do things, because what else are you doing? And he's like, you're right, I don't know, I guess I failed this test because I would be dead if you didn't save me. So he helps them travel. He's like carrying babies on his back and stuff. He's a giant space marine. It's a useful person to have around. He builds ships, they launch a ship, and then there's lightning, ice storms. The ocean is terrible on Fenris.
Yes, it is.
And there is a giant sea serpent battle, which
that
is
a
crazy
thing as well.
good. Yeah, there's a sea serpent and it breaks a ship, and he has to hold them together. It's great. I love that story. And then they get there. They get to Asaheim. Also, they think he died under a sea serpent, but then Primaris Marine magic, he swims his way through the ice lightning sea back to their ship, and they save him again. And then they get to Asaheim, and Geetha's like, let me in. And the people at the gates are like, nuh-uh, so you're a psyker.
This was a little bit of an odd scene, because at this point, Guilliman and the Indomitus Crusade have shown up on Fenris and are trying to convince Grimnar to accept the Primaris and to like be part of the Indomitus Crusade.
And
it's not going well.
Having it.
However, the first people that Gaius and Geeta run into are actually some Imperial stormtroopers that are like there just as an honor guard alongside Guilliman.
Yeah.
And it's such a kind of a weird scene of Gaius, who at the start of this book was quite imperial, you know, in his demeanor and values.
I think he's a feral space wolf when he shows up.
Right.
Also, to be fair, he left her. He was like, the gates are there, you're good.
Yeah.
I'm not going there, bye. And then she gets...
he followed her in
then
secret.
He doesn't know what to do with himself, so he starts secretly following her. So she doesn't know he's following her. She gets there, and the stormtroopers are like, lady, you're a psyker, and we're taking you to psyker prison.
Yep.
And she's like, I don't know what psyker prison is. And she's like, but I need to speak to the Great Wolf. And so, like, some tensions ensue, and I think some of the stormtroopers pull their weapons, and Gaius bursts out of the tree line and murders everyone.
He murders half of them.
That's a lot of people for a short amount of time.
Well, no, you might have missed it.
Yeah.
When
they told Aryak, he's like, only half?
Yeah. Was it Aryak or Grimnar?
I think it was Aryak.
Yeah.
He's like, only half?
Yeah, he was like, not impressed.
Yeah.
What do you mean they stopped him up by only killing half?
Yeah. So he kills half of them, and now they're like, we're going to arrest you, you weird, like, wolf person, like, who climbed out of a forest. Like, you're definitely getting arrested. But one of them is like, I think he might be a Primaris Marine. It's weird. And she's like, I will go to your psyker test if you let me see the Great Wolf first, and I won't go see the Great Wolf unless you bring my weird space wolf friend. And they're like, okay, fine. So then she meets Logan Grimnar, and the Gaius Landsat Marenghi stories get tied together with...
Here's my problem with all of that. Gaius never meets Grimnar.
No.
Not ever.
No.
And I just feel like that's so weird.
Yeah, it is weird.
Like,
maybe it happened and they didn't show it, like that time when they went to Himertha, but no one told us about it.
It is weird, the parts of this book that they just tell and don't show.
Yeah.
Like, the storyline of Mudair traveling to Himertha to look for evidence is just, like, they get there, and then we're done with that storyline. And then, like, they recover it, and there's some explanation.
Yeah, and they're like, and this dude died, and you're like, wait, when did we go there?
Right.
Yeah.
Like...
But can we pause while we're talking about Mudair for that great scene in the shuttle between
Mudair
and Vikalan?
Yeah,
that is the best scene ever. Yeah. So they're in this troop carrier. I think that they're going to Fenris. It's the first time they're going to Fenris.
They're going down to Fenris.
And they don't want it to seem like we're bringing this giant honor guard and all these warriors and all these weapons, so we're taking a regular troop carrier, which is not enough space for a custodian and anything else, but it's like Vikalan and Mudair. So Vikalan's like hunched in there, and he's got his like guardian spear sideways so he doesn't stab Mudair. And they have this weird conversation where Mudair accuses Vikalan of being like super rich and privileged, right? Because there is a process of becoming a custodian, and it's a very specific set of families and genes. And Vikalan concludes that Mudair's family, because he is from an affluent imperial family, tried to send someone to become a custodian and they failed, and it may have been Mudire, but we don't know. And they're like, yeah. And Vikaland goes, well, I should let you know that, like, we aren't, like, we're not random. It's a planned creation of particular gene seeds. So, like, even if...
There's no gene seed.
Yeah, or, genetics. It's a planned genetic thing. And so you didn't know you were going to fail, but it would have been known that you were going to fail from the start, right? And Mudire goes, so that means someone made Kolquan an asshole on purpose? And Vikaland's like, yes, I guess that's accurate. And it's so good, and it makes them such great characters. Yeah,
Kolquan is such an asshole throughout the entire Dawn of Fire
we
series.
didn't really talk about that because we talked about it in the first book, and we talked about it in the second book. But he hates Guilliman and he doesn't trust him, and like he's sending Vikaland on all these missions that have the undertone of also catch Guilliman doing something wrong so we can murder him.
Yep.
Right, and like he just is being a douche to everyone. I thought that was really good. I thought that was a great scene, and I loved it. It's one of my favorite Mudire scenes, I think.
What else was there to talk about?
That's pretty much it. They get there, and everyone's together now, and Guilliman's trying to convince Logan Grimnar that he needs to accept these Primaris Marines.
There's a couple details that kind of stuck out for me that I didn't love so much.
Okay.
There is sort of the time jump at the end.
What I wanted closure on was I wanted something between Guilliman and Logan Grimnar. Like, I sort of knew, or I thought I knew at the outset, that the answer is going to be yes. Like, the Space Wolves aren't going to disappear, so they must accept these Primaris Marines. Mm-hmm. And there's all this tension built up about Logan Grimnar wanting to say no, and Guilliman trying to figure out the right way to, like, diplomatically get him to say yes. And clearly that works because there's a time jump after Gaius and Geetha get there, and they have this conversation about what they're seeing, where the Space Wolves are taking the Gotrock, and they have tons and tons of Space Marines with them, many of them Primaris.
They're up to like 1,000 per great company, which is huge.
So you know that Guilliman and Grimnar must have come to some...
But I think there is a mention where that isn't what happened. There wasn't an agreement. It was Guilliman basically saying, I'm going to leave these folks here and leave. Okay.
But then at some point, Grimnar must have decided based on, I don't know, how well Gaius performs within his unit.
No, I don't even think it was Gaius. Like, remember.
Like, what Grimnar convinces him to do it?
Geetha.
Are we going to see that? No?
Also, that was the other thing. Just her explanation of what happened.
Yeah.
Like, and I feel like it was so far back from when she actually had her visions.
Yeah.
And at the time, I was kind of skipping over those visions because it was a little...
They're a slog,
okay, whatever. So it's weird that at the end, it's like, and then she explained her visions to him. It's like, I barely even remember what they were.
Yeah, they don't tell you what they are.
No, they do, but they were like three-quarters of a book ago.
Yeah, and very vaguely.
Yeah.
So she explains his visions to Grimnar. She explains her visions, and this makes him decide that they are now making their own Primaris Marines, because I assume that's why...
No, they were always going to make their own Primaris Marines.
Okay.
That wasn't a problem.
I don't get the end of the
book. Like Ulrich the Slayer, who's sort of like the chief apothecary, he was all for
he was
getting
on board.
The Primaris because we make them from Fenrisians.
Yes.
That makes them official Space Wolves.
Yes, I get that. But like, no one said yes or no to Guilliman.
Correct. So there's no oath, there's no honor, they're not part of the Indomitus Crusade.
Okay.
They're gonna just do their thing in this area.
Okay.
And Guilliman's okay with that, because what Guilliman cared most about is this group making sure the orcs...
this line is held here.
Don't make it to Terra.
Right. No, I get that. But then, if that is the conclusion, that like they were just going to make their own Primaris Marines and it would be fine, I'm not sure this book needs to exist then. Like, what is the point of this book?
I think to make sure that the Space Wolves didn't burn themselves out, thinking that it's the Wolftime.
Yeah, but I feel like you could have done that in the next book with a line like, and Guilliman got a letter from Logan Grimnar that was like, we made Primarises and they're fine and we're battling orcs.
No, that takes time.
That takes one sentence.
No, I mean to make Primaris Marines.
Yeah, but you could just say it happened the way Hemhertha happened. We went there. We're not going to tell you about it.
No. The time to Hemhertha was like a matter of weeks, like days or weeks.
Yeah,
making Primaris Marines, they're talking like 7-8 years.
Yeah, but I guess is the point of this Dawn of Fire series to show every chapter getting their Primaris Marines?
No.
Yeah, I didn't think so. So then why is there a whole book dedicated to the Space Wolves deciding to make Primaris Marines?
Because they needed to show some chapter, like, not accepting it.
Okay.
And of them all, like, just the idea that giving the Primaris to all the chapters isn't going to be like giving it to all the Ultramarine successors who are like, oh my god, it's Guilliman. Yes, of course, we'll take whatever you give us.
Yes, I get that, but I just feel like, I don't know, you could do that with great characterization on Guilliman in his thoughts or conversations with someone else. It didn't need its own whole book if the whole point of the book is, and now they have Primaris Marines.
I don't think that's the point of the book, though. Like, I think the main point is that the Space Wolves no longer, well, mostly don't believe that it is the Wolftime right now. So they're not trying to get themselves killed.
Okay.
Which I guess you don't know that for this moment, but they have gone through at the moment 3-4 cataclysmic events in the last 5 years.
Okay.
Magnus has invaded Fenris. They got into a war between the Inquisition and the Dark Angels. If you remember from the Emperor's Gift, the Month of Shame, that was in recent memory.
Okay. So, but none of those were the Wolftime. They didn't think any of that was the Wolftime. So why is it the Wolftime now?
But they kind of, well, no. They thought all of this was leading up to the Wolftime.
Okay.
But the point at the end is that the wolves that were around during the Plague of Unbelief, when Fenris was directly being conquered, they thought that was the Wolftime.
But now we've all agreed that it's not the Wolftime right now. Kind of.
Except for Njal. And this
Njal think it might be the Wolftime.
He didn't think it was the Wolftime, and it was only Gita's visions that made him. He got kind of sad about this
because he's like, wrong,
oh, this might be a sign of the Wolftime.
Yeah.
Because
and then he goes off on his own while they go to Gotrock.
Yeah, and so that leads into a completely separate Space Wolf series called The Blood of Asaheim. Yeah, we might read it.
Okay. Yeah, I would say overall, I give it a solid 5 out of 10, and I guess you might press me to make it a 6 just for Gaius. Just for Gaius fighting that sea serpent, really. That was great for me.
That was really good.
Yeah. And maybe that quick little scene with Vikelin and Mudire. That was gold. It was great.
There was another bit
I laughed out loud.
There was another bit that might have just been the timing of publication, but when Crom Dragongaze is first fighting the orcs, he's fighting alongside the Dragon Spears chapter. The Dragon Spears are presented sort of like not overtly, but as Salamander's successors. The problem with this is twofold. So the event in which Crom and the Dragon Gaze chapters fought together was known. It's covered in another series called The Psychic Awakening.
Okay.
But The Psychic Awakening is supposed to happen 12 to 15 years into the Indomitus Crusade.
Okay.
Like
Not now.
Primaris are fully established,
Okay.
and the Dragon Spears chapter were supposed to be a Ultima founding chapter. Like, they are 100% Primaris.
Oh, okay.
As part of the Indomitus Crusade, eventually, as many chapters as they can get Primaris reinforcement, but half of the Primaris form entirely new chapters.
Gotcha. Okay. So this is a little bit of a retcon.
Well, what's weird about this is twofold, because either they're a Primaris chapter, and Crom should have already known who Primaris are. Clearly he doesn't, and they're not. They're a firstborn chapter. Or they're a Salamander's successor, which Salamanders did not have any known successors at this time. It might not be known that they were a Salamander successor, there's a few other chapters like the Black Dragons who probably are Salamander successors, but it was never confirmed. But the way he talks about them, he's like, oh, let me guess, they want to go protect the innocents. Just like
Very Salamander.
Very Salamander. So that's kind of an odd point to it.
Huh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Ready for book 4?
Yeah, book 4. Book 4 is... Let me pull this up. book 4 is Throne of Light by Guy Haley.
Okay.
So we're back to a Guy Haley book. From what I know offhand about this, it's kind of about the Black Templars and their acceptance of Primaris Marines.
Huh, I'm excited.
Yeah, I don't actually know a huge amount beyond that. I think some
Okay.
Sisters of Battle might be involved.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
That's it for us.
That's it.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.